Hello, everybody. I'm Kieron, Kieron Banerji, and Sarah's asked me today to talk about recording good audio. I thought I'd just start by introducing myself a little bit, my background, my career, my specialities, those sorts of things. So I studied music and audio engineering before going straight into freelancing. That was mainly with doing music engineering and mixing, doing a little bit of post-production work. From there, I joined Monocle magazine for their radio station, and I was there for many years before leaving to join as head of audio for Finimize, a financial media brand, doing similar things to what Monocle are. And then on the side of that, I do a lot of contract work. So I still do quite a lot of music engineering, mixing, and spend most of my time sort of doing commercial branded audio projects now as well. Kind of when talking about recording good audio, what I mainly wanted to go through today are kind of the basics to try and cater to sort of all levels of people listening and to be as useful as I can be. And I thought the best thing to do is to try and like dispel some myths about recording good audio, because I think in the whole audio world, especially when you get to like pro audio and kit and tech related things, like people love to throw jargon around and be very OTT with things. And they're usually just fancy words or like ridiculously complicated sort of like ways of putting very simple things just to boast knowledge and stuff like that. So I think it'd be really good to dispel some of those methods. So the things I want to talk about today, which I think are most relevant when aiming to catch quality audio and record it, is signal flow, which I think is the key to understanding how to really capture something really well. So that's like learning from literally when your voice is going into something all the way through till it being recorded. And by sort of going through each path of that, you get a really good understanding of what's going on. And it's also really useful for troubleshooting, which is probably the most stressful part of any recording situation, especially for dealing with high profile talent. If something goes wrong, which it often does because it's tech and it's wires and cables, it's good to be able to very quickly identify the problem. And I think by understanding that train really helps. So by doing that, we're gonna start by talking about microphones. I'll sort of give a bit of an introduction to the different types of microphones, ones that you might have seen, ones that you might want to get on your radar that I think are really good at different price points. We'll talk about preamps and interfaces. Obviously, a lot of interfaces have preamps built in, but we'll talk all about those. We'll go through some good options if you haven't got one already, if you're looking to buy one, and what the difference is, or if you're looking to upgrade or something. We'll touch really briefly on acoustics and the environment, but a lot of that stuff really on a beginner level is very common sense. Don't do it when there's a construction site outside or something like that. Good practice and troubleshooting. We'll just go over some rules of thumb, and troubleshooting kind of will come back into that signal flow conversation again as well. Then to be topical, I think it's probably best to talk about recording in lockdown, remote options. But obviously these sort of options are things you can use after lockdown, if hopefully that does happen. And then that will kind of then lead into a very final note about managing client expectations and budgeting for kit, and trying to get an idea of if something's overkill or if it's something you need to invest in, but also how to talk to clients about that, because on many scenarios, I think people ask a lot and usually aren't willing to foot much of a bill. So I think it's really important that you are able to raise these questions with a client and be able to talk about it within a kit scenario as well for them. So sort of the very first thing we'll talk about is preparation. This, I think, is the most fundamental part of recording. I know it sounds ridiculous, but to be prepared and to know about the situation you're recording it can really help you design a really, really good solution for what you need, around cost, around suitability when picking out kit. I think that's really, really important. So obviously that really does start at the most simple thing. Whenever you're about to approach a recording, or if someone's asking you to go and do one, whether it be a tape sync or record an interview, a one-on-one, a remote interview, is to get all the information possible, and no information should be spared. You'll never overdo it. So the environment, the furniture in the room, how many people there's going to be, is it a wooden table, is the talent really picky? Do they want to be holding microphones? Do they want to be not having to deal with anything like that? These are all really important questions, and they kind of stop you from getting caught out on the day. And if you're panicked, or if you're trying to seal holes, then, you know, quite frankly, you're not going to record good audio, because your mind's going to be thinking about different things. The budget is a massively important thing to discuss with clients from the outset, and to discuss with yourself as well. You know, how much do you want to spend on this? Where's money best put into this kit, into this, and having that conversation with your client or with yourself very early on is a very good idea, and it'll help you best pick a good solution. So now with signal flow, I guess that's also probably one of those jargony words that gets thrown around as well, but it's basically just from source to the end, from someone's voice being captured, or your own voice being captured, to it being recorded and saved or backed up, which is something very important we'll come on to as well. Now this can change, and there's no right or wrong answer. There are some wrong things to do, sure. There'll be some things that will be very destructive in the recording process, but these will chop and change. So it's not really sort of a one thing fits all. So don't be too worried if, you know, some parts aren't relevant to your application, or you might need to add an element to it or something like that. So musical operations, this changes around a lot. In complicated broadcast scenarios, like a studio will already have different stages built in, EQs, compressors, you know, that those aren't something that's done in post-production. They're sometimes being done to the signal as it's coming in. But as far as it comes to recording at home, unless you want to set up something really fancy yourself, which obviously costs quite a lot of money, or if you're doing it remotely and you're going somewhere and recording, or if it's being done over one of these like Zencaster or Clean Feed, they're called VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, then they're not going to really apply to this. All we're going to concentrate today on is getting really good, clean signal, recorded nicely, and backed up. So the normal signal flow is kind of the microphone, then obviously the cabling. That will then go into an interface, and then that'll be going into either your computer or into a recorder. Sometimes before that process, you'd get a preamp before the interface, but most of these solutions now have them all built in. So your interface has the preamp in there, and the preamp is literally amplifying the signal before it leaves the unit. Then obviously monitoring is the other thing that comes out of your interface. So headphones, speakers, although obviously headphones is always the way forward when you're recording, unless it's in like a live scenario with musicians, which is rare and something we're not going to go into. But overarching principles, that's what you're looking at here. When you're going to go and set up a recording somewhere, that's what you're going to need. Now, there's some different variations of those final stages, like are you recording into a computer, in which case that's obviously going to change the interface and the preamp you're using, because obviously it needs to get into a computer, or are you doing it into an all-in-one unit, something like a Zoom or a Tascam, more field recorder type thing, which is very common, and probably the most commonly used now. I still personally will record into a computer. That's just so I think you have slightly more control over some different options. You can monitor different things at different points. I have a little bit more faith in my computer than I do a recorder, although they're extremely sturdy. But recorders obviously have their benefit too, which we'll get into a little bit later. Let's assume we're not recording in a studio. It's a privilege for many, and quite frankly, if you're going to a studio to record, you're not going to have to think about a lot of these things. So we're going to sort of like skip over all that side of things and just talk about remote recording mainly, or recording your at home yourself, or with several people at home or something. And we'll start with the most important part of everything, which is microphones. Now, this is something we can talk about for hours and hours, and people on forums and stuff like that will get really nerdy into it. But we'll just go over, I think, some of the terminology that's used, especially when shopping around for microphones, because there is no right or wrong option when buying microphones. Some are obviously higher quality than others, but they all have their different applications, and they're all good for different things, for different types of source. So, you know, being able to identify what those differences in microphones is yourself when shopping around or trying out new things is really valuable, because, like I said, there's no right or wrong with this. You need to identify your budget, what you want to spend on a microphone, and then pick the best possible option for that. If you have the budget to maybe buy a few microphones, then you can buy different ones that do different things. But, you know, if you just want to buy one for you at home, VOs, or two for location recording, then you might want a more jack of all trades. So we can give some examples, but I think it's really important to know some of the terminology around them, because if you're going on into a shop, or if you're going online to buy them, probably more likely they'll mention all these different things, and they all mean something, and they should be taken into consideration when picking out a microphone too. So the two main microphones you'll be using most probably is a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone. The two most common types of microphone. There are others, plenty other different types. You get boundary mics, you get ribbon mics, which are often used in music, very nice mics, but very sensitive. You wouldn't use them for anything very robust. And shotgun mics. Shotgun mics are used a lot in broadcasts and podcast recordings, and film and TV dialogues usually picked up with one. They're on the boom stands. Shotgun mics are very directional as well, so we'll talk about them in a minute, because they are very useful for, say, recording in the streets. Why they record actors with them to try and get rid of the noise of all the crew and stuff like that. They are solely going in on one source. So the main difference between a dynamic and a condenser microphone and how they work is a dynamic has like a diaphragm, then a voice coil, then a magnet, and then a condenser has a diaphragm and a backplate, but it needs an electrical charge. That electrical charge is called phantom power, and on all your kit and all your interfaces and preamps, that'll be that 48 volt sign. That's called phantom power, and that's basically that electric charge a condenser needs for the diaphragm to correctly recreate the fluctuations of the acoustics that is taking in the source. So that's something to take into consideration. You know, sometimes if you're going out onto the field, that's one you can be caught out with. I've seen it happen before. People go with condenser microphones, and then they find out the recorder hasn't got phantom power. It's quite rare now. I don't think Zooms have them have phantom power. I don't think. Can't remember now. Maybe. Worth checking. But you can get caught out because you won't get good signal out of them. You'll turn up on the day and you'll just get no signal. So make sure you got that. Now, all those more interfacey preamp sort of things like a Focusrite Scarlett are really, really common, Moto 8 pre's and stuff like that. They will all have phantom power for each channel as well. So you can chop and change them if you're using a mixture of dynamic and condenser microphones. I think for like a podcast recording or something like that would be quite unusual to be doing that. So for that reason, that's something to take into consideration. What's your recorder? Does it have phantom power? Are you relying on power somewhere else? If not, maybe dynamic microphone's the way to go. One thing I would suggest actually is looking at battery powered condensers, because that is they exist and they don't rely on 48 volts. So it wouldn't matter if a preamp has them, and they just take a AA battery. So an example of one of those, which I think is very good for interviews and journalistic purposes, is the Audio Technica. I think it's the 8088. Something there about 8084, 8088, 8033. Small sort of pencil style microphone. They've got a bit of handling noise in them, which I'm not too keen on. And because it's a shorter like handle, I guess, sometimes your hand comes over the cable, and that's something you should really avoid doing when recording, is messing around with the cables. You don't want your hand over the grill of the microphone, you don't want it at the cable, you want it firmly around the mic itself. So let's go through some pros and cons of dynamic microphones first. We'll move on to condensers. So dynamic microphones are really sturdy. They're really reliable. It's pretty difficult to break some of them. The very, very famous one is the SM58, the Shure SM58. It's probably the most commonly used microphone in live music applications. They can take really loud sounds without distorting, without sort of getting messed up. There's actually a video on YouTube you can watch if it's something you're into. Someone shoots one with a shotgun or something and it still works. They are really, really sturdy. So that's something that's worth taking into consideration as well, depending on who you're giving the microphone to. And they don't need a power supply. That's a massive pro for them. Obviously, you're not relying on phantom power. They're less sensitive, which could be a good thing. But then obviously, because they're less sensitive, they're good for loud sources. So that's why they're often used in music recording for things like kick drums and guitar amps, but also the voice. So like, if you're shouting into it, or you're trying to record some sort of sound effect, or the voice you're trying to capture is in more of like an actor setting. SM58 works really well. If someone's like performing with the mic and not interviewing or something, then that's something you should take into consideration. Means that you will have to kind of be not riding levels or gains at all. Because they're less sensitive, I think they can be a good jack of all trades a little bit. If you're not in a perfectly treated acoustic environment, they can be really good, just simply because they're not going to take in as much sound. They're less sensitive. So, if something happens deep in the distance, it's probably not going to be caught up on an SM58. However, with the condenser microphone, probably will be. So other examples are the SM57, although they're probably more used for recording sources of audio that isn't voice. Some people use them for voice, but I see them more commonly used in music recording or in Foley or in sound design work. And then the SM57B, that's really commonly used in broadcast. They're one of my favorite microphones. I think they're fantastic value. To give you an idea of price points, SM58 is going to set you back like 80 to 100 quid. 57 similar, maybe 70 to 90 or something. Worth noting, they're really good to get on the secondhand market. If you're being very budget conscious, or you want to buy several of them, you're buying 6. Get them secondhand. Like I said, you can literally shoot these things and they're probably going to work. So you'd be very unlucky to buy one and something to be really fundamentally wrong with that. SM57Bs, if If you can get 4 of these, you're gonna be sorted. They're brilliant. They're amazing. They also look really cool. They look the part. I know it sounds ridiculous, but depending on your clients, that could be like a big deal. I've worked for clients before where I know that's been a big deal. And they're the ones that kind of have those like inbuilt sort of like pop shields on the outside. They're already on it. They're like this big. They're a dynamic microphone, and they're about 370, 360 maybe. They're under £400, I think. Very worth thinking about. Now, condenser microphones are the ones that you're more likely going to find in a studio. They're more sensitive. You're going to pick up more breathing, pop noises, lip movements, all the sort of disgusting sounds of the mouth. They will pick up those more. They pick up more nuances in the human voice because they are fundamentally more detailed mics. But because of that, they can't handle high pressures of sound quite as well. So they will distort quicker. You'll find your audio peaking quicker when recording. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, dynamic microphones are less sensitive, so they're sometimes easier to manage that sort of thing. They will pick up noises that dynamic microphones wouldn't. So, you know, if you do get that sound in the background or a click or something like that, and it might pick it up. So that's probably worth noting. And that also then comes back to that preparation thing. Where is it? Because that's going to massively influence the microphone you pick for the recording. Like I said, they're great for capturing subtle nuances. They can't, you know, you should check this out on all the websites and all the things. They'll always talk about what SPL level they can do, a sound pressure level. And that's essentially what sort of volume they can take of voice, essentially. Examples of these are the Neumann U87 is probably the most, the SM58 and the U87, I'd say the most famous microphones in the world. They are about £2,000. They're the ones you'll see in all the videos of pop stars recording, rock stars. It's the most commonly used vocal mic in music engineering, probably. They're very expensive. They're very nice. They're what I think the BBC uses for like the breakfast show. I think Grimmy uses one, stuff like that. So yeah, they are good. Then it's quite expensive. So I think the next best option, if you're looking for still a kind of premium mic, is the Neumann TLM 102 and 103s. They're about 400 or 500, and they are absolutely superb. I couldn't recommend them more. They're still an expensive microphone, but my God, you're going to get quality out of them. Neumann are industry leaders in manufacturing audio equipment. They make amazing speakers, amazing microphones. You know you're going to get your value out of them. They've got warranties on them for 20 years. And you know you're in safe hands. And a lot of people are impressed if you know you have a couple of Neumann mics and stuff. Some people might see that as a plus. They're smaller. I think Howard Stern uses one, actually. I think he is the TLM. So yeah, I mean, really popularly used by some very credible places. Then the Audio Technica makes some really nice condenser microphones. The AT4050 series, I believe what Monocle, we're using Monocle, I think. Yeah. Very nice, very good quality. Also around the 300, maybe 280, 300 mark. I honestly think if you think about spending 300, maybe think about waiting a little longer and get your TLM. The Neumann mic would be an investment worth done. And remember, all these things do retain their value. So if you ever wanted to sell them on or change them with people, they do retain their value. Now the newest on the market, I say the newest, are a British company called Aston. And they've just released a lot of mics. They're like bombing everyone's Instagram and stuff like that with like adverts and stuff at the moment. And they make one called the Origin. They make a few. Spirit, I think there's another one. But the Aston Origin mic, I honestly, it's absolutely superb mic. It also comes in around maybe 350, 300. And I honestly do think they are amazing. Some of the best pop records that have come over the last sort of like 2 years have been using them. They're really nice vocal microphones. They look fantastic. They come in a nice shock mount. Shock mounts are really good for absorbing these sounds, which obviously like an SM58 would just come in like a clip or something, which isn't going to be as absorbent as a shock mount, which actually suspends a microphone in the air. Then moving down from that a little bit, Audio-Technica have several sort of like levels down from there that'll come down towards the 150 mark, 100 mark, I think. Then the Rode NT2, there's an NT1. The Rode NT2 is a fantastic value mic, really good. Looks like a U87 without the price tag. It picks up higher frequencies more, so a lot of female vocalists use them. They're very commonly used in female vocal studio engineering. But I must say, I think they're fantastic quality. They're well made. They're really great. Now, another thing to note on condenser mics, which is worth picking up on, is when you buy one, when you have one, they'll have a little switch on them. Some of them will have several switches on them. One control is polar pattern, which we'll come on to, but the other one's like a minus number, -10, -20 is also common, and that's a pad, and it literally will reduce it by -10 dB. So if you've got a condenser microphone and you are barely touching the preamp and it's already too loud, everything's too loud, the pad there suppresses the noise by whatever the predefined amount is, -10, -20. Also worth knowing, even if you don't use the pad, it could be on by mistake. So if you're sat there, you've plugged everything in and you're boosting it and you're like, what the hell? And you've got two and one is fine, the other, check and see if that pad's on. It's a very common mistake or a very common problem people find. It's very easy to troubleshoot. You just knock it off. Then you have USB mics. They're often condensers as well. They're very easy. Rode make a bunch of them. Basic podcasting. They're fine. They are fine. They're plug and play. They're very easy. You can go straight to GarageBand or Audition, Logic, Pro Tools, whatever you're using. They are really good to send out to people. We'll come on to remote recording as well. They're pretty inexpensive, really. Some of them are in the 40 quid mark. Some might even be cheaper. And then some are a bit more expensive, like 100 quid, like the blue microphones and the snowballs you might have seen. Overall, okay mics. I'm not crazy about them. They're fine. They're good for purpose. And if your budget doesn't want to stretch as far as the other mics, or you don't have to get all this different kit to go with them, that's good, really good option to think about. Now, all these microphones also have switches on them that changes, so it'll look like it looks like a Japanese fan, like it's like out like that, or it's a little cardioid shape, and that's its polar pattern. And some of them have changes polar patterns. That's another thing you want to watch out for. If you've got a mic that has all these options, the Rode NT2 has got all these options. It will change the polar pattern, which is essentially from the point of the microphone base, where is it picking up the source from? Where is it rejecting sound from? And where is it focusing sound on? And the most common is a cardioid. An SM58 would be a cardioid mic. Mainly what you'll have, mainly what you need. And it is exactly that. It's like a cardioid. Imagine just a fan coming out of that, and that's what it is. Then you get a super cardioid, which just imagine that is a little bit thinner, so it's more focused, and that'll be more like what a shotgun mic is, very focused, very small polar pattern. But obviously that means, if you're holding it and they do come away from the source, then you'll get dropout, really quite drastically as well. They are super directional. So might not always be the best option, but they come in at around 300-400 quid for the Rode one, I think. The Rode NTG2, is probably your best bet. With that, they've got very high handling noises, so you want to make sure you get something to put it on and hold. And then you also get those big windshields on them as well, called dead cats. They're called all sorts of things. And Rycote make a lot of different accessories for microphones, and they often make grips, pistol grips they're called, so you're not holding the microphone directly. So if you're investing in a mic like that, it's also probably worth investing in some stuff like that too. Omni, it's a circle. It will capture sound from everywhere. I doubt you'll ever need one. Really good for picking up, like if you're going to the beach and you want to get the sound of the beach, and you've got the budget and you're doing some sort of sound design project, they're really useful. I think the Rode NT2 lets you pick one of them. And figure of 8, literally imagine the microphone going bang in the middle of an 8. It will pick up everything in a cardio pattern in front of it and behind it, but not from the sides. Then the other thing you might see that gets said a lot is, are they large diaphragm or small diaphragm microphones? As a rule of thumb, large diaphragm microphones will be like the Rode NT2, the U87, and then small ones are little pencil mics, like the Rode NT5s or the Neumann, I can't remember what their pencil ones are called, the little Schups mics like that. Super expensive, really audiophile mics, very high quality, very precision things. I wouldn't pick them up if I was you. They're not that useful. If you're recording lots of like beautiful acoustic guitars and classical instruments, great, go for it, get some in your arsenal, but I wouldn't go too far into them if I was you. So don't make the mistake and buy a bunch of them, because you'll find they're too sensitive and they only pick up these really light small nuances, and they'll sound amazing if you put them really nice on an instrument, but probably not for radio or broadcast, podcasting or whatever. Cons of the large diaphragm mics are its benefit. They have a widening pattern at lower frequencies. They are less sensitive to the small ones, which if you're recording the voice, I think is probably best. You don't want to hear everything. Yeah. Then the obvious things, make sure you have pop filters, stands, clips, the threads that go into the clips, because a mic stand might not have the right contact to the clip. They're called threads, mic threads. They'll cost you £1 off Amazon. Buy 4 of them, keep them in your pocket. You can buy some that go on key rings, which are very useful. It saved me 100 times. And this comes like your preparation. Find out where you're going to be, who's going to be there, what the table's made of. Are you going to use a mic stand on the table, a tabletop one, or are you going to have on a boom stand like the ones you see vocalists with on stage? Get all this information early on, and make sure you're picking the best option. You know, if it's on a carpet, put the boom stand on a carpet and have it coming in, especially if they're on some sort of really hard thing. You don't want it picking up all this stuff. You want to make sure that the mic's on an absorbent base. You know, it does make a difference. Take all this into consideration. They're all very cheap things to buy off Amazon. So just make sure you've got them in your case. Buy yourself a Pelly case and just get all these stuff in there. They will save you 100 times, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you got. If you've got a really fancy U87 microphone, you turn up in the day and you can't affix it to anything, and you haven't got a pop shield or you haven't got anything like that, recording isn't going to be that great. The other thing you can sometimes look at online when you're buying these things, look at the handling noise and look at the frequency response. They're things you can look into in your own time, or feel free to hit me up about that afterwards. Then they're going into the preamps and interfaces. Okay, now this is up to you. It depends if you're going into a recorder, an all-in-one, a computer. This is completely up to you. Zoom, Marantz's, they're very common. They're very Zoom, like a Zoom H4n, 2 inputs and on-built mic, just in case. They're coming at like 250, 170 quid. They're great. I use Zooms. I think they're good. The preamps are a bit noisy, so if you're really boosting, you've got a dynamic microphone, you're really boosting it. I do find the preamps a little bit noisy, but I think all in all, they're pretty sturdy. They're pretty good value. Marantz are a bit more expensive. check what, and if you get the big Marantz, which are quite expensive, like 600-700 quid, or the small ones, they do have a different mic input. So make sure you check that, because they have like a little small jack to XLR, which is the normal cable for a mic. Don't get caught out by that. Make sure you got the right connections. What makes Marantz more expensive to the Zooms, I think, is the quality of the preamp. However, I've had a lot of problem with Marantz's breaking. I don't think they're as rugged, kicking them around a bit. They're on a flight and they're in the hold or something like that. I don't think they stand up quite as well as the Zooms. I think the Zooms are a little bit sturdier. Then if you do have the budget, there's one called Sound Devices. They make some beautiful little interfaces. They'll cost you north of 800. They'll be a very clever investment. What's amazing about them is they have rechargeable batteries. So you're in a field, doesn't matter. You don't need a plug. Definitely worth one putting on your wish list if that's something you're interested in. They are fantastic. The preamps in them are like top class A grade. They're brilliant. Then if you're going into a computer, Zooms do also actually double up as an interface to your computer via USB, and that's quite useful. The Focusrite Scarletts are really good. You can buy just the one input if it's just you at home, or then there's two inputs, and they go up to 4, 8. They're really good. They're really affordable. They're between the 150 for like a one input, like 250, I think, for 4, like 300 or something. Very affordable, very good, reliable machines. M Audio makes some. I think they're a bit cheaper. Motu are what I use. I think they're great. They don't color the sound. The preamp's pretty good. Apollo are fancy ones. They're really nice. They come with really nice plugins. But SSL have just made one. SSL are one of the like best audio hardware makers in the world. Solid State Logic. They're expensive. One to look into to go on your sound devices list maybe, but they've just released one that is marketed at the podcast recorders and stuff like that. They've got like really nice big knobs on them that like they have on those big consoles and stuff. Yeah. Then the other thing is you could incorporate a mixer into that. So if you've got loads of different sources, you can buy yourself a mixer, and you just got one feed coming from the mixer into your recorder, into your computer. That'll allow you to ride the levels between lots of guests, because there's 6 guests and you've got 6 microphones turned up. It adds a lot of room noise. It adds a lot of background noise. So you can cancel that out by fading in and out. They'll have preamps in them and phantom power in them as well, so that they're useful for that. So that's worth taking into consideration. Behringer makes some pretty affordable ones if you want to get into the mixer game. Then Mackie makes some really reliable ones, and then you can go up. SSL have them; they're really expensive. But yeah, I think Behringer aren't the best name in audio. They make more budget equipment, but they're purpose built. They're pretty decent. Then you choose between a computer or a recorder. Like I said, that's up to you. What are you recording into? What do you feel more comfortable about? Obviously with a computer, if the power goes out, you're stuffed. What I always recommend is incorporate a mixer into it. Have all that going into your interface, going into your computer, and then you can have a second output from mixers, and then that could be going into your Zoom, and that's great for backing up. The amount of times that has saved me is unbelievable. My laptop's died, it's frozen. The DAW, just like Audition or Pro Tools or Logic, has crashed or something. Towards the end of a recording, that backup is the holy grail. So worth thinking about. If you're recording at home by yourself, not an important consideration. If you're going out to record high profile talent, tape sync, you haven't got a lot of time, a backup is a very, very good idea. And by that, I mean, if you haven't got an option to do the mixer into another recorder and all that sort of thing, get your iPhone out, stick that there, always back up. Acoustics Environments, find this out very early on. Is there curtains? Is it on a concrete table, you know, you need to find out all this information early on, because it all affects the decision, the type of microphone you use, as we spoke earlier about them. Get all this information down early. Suggest doing it something different. Have the confidence in suggesting it. Yeah. So we'll move on to good practice and troubleshooting. Like I said, if you follow that route of things, like your microphone, your cabling, it's going to your mixer, if you know that in your head, troubleshooting is really easy. You know, okay, so I can hear it in my mixer, but it's not kind of my computer. Okay, so it's got to be something between the computer and there. You know, it really helps, and it can really, really quickly eradicate problems. Something you should think about, for sure. Do the research. Like I said, that's really important. Environment, furnishings, tables, chairs, all these things. Do they turn? The chair squeaky? I know it sounds common sense. Yeah, I know it sounds like pedantic. It will save your recordings. It will. If you're on a creaky, disgusting chair or something, and it's just like, it will pick up on a condenser microphone very loudly. Always monitor what you're recording. Always do that. I'm sorry, like, it is the most important thing. On Audition, it's the little I. It means input monitoring. Logic, I think, is the I as well. On Pro Tools, it'll be I. It's called I sort of in all those softwares. GarageBand. No, on GarageBand, I think it's headphones. Little yellow headphones. Always hear what you're recording. Hear it from the mixer. Make sure your headphones aren't like really like sort of haven't got a spill, and they don't bleed. Headphone bleed. That's really important. If your guests have got headphones on, that they're not like super loud and they're coming into the microphone, that's something for your checklist to make sure on. But please always listen to what you're recording. It's the way you'll get the best sound. You'll be able to turn your mics around the right way. You know, the amount of times I've caught, you know, you've been setting up in a rush or something, or the guest has moved his own microphone the other way around, and you're like, hang on, that's something you're only going to catch, because in a busy situation, your eye won't catch that. You maybe you're very detailed stuff, but it might not. Is the microphone and the guest pointing towards a fridge or an aircon unit? It can be as simple as turning them around to another side of the table, you know, and that is something that you'll sometimes notice when you're input monitoring and setting up. Get individual levels, and take control of the situation. Ask everyone to speak one at a time, get the best possible sound from them. What did you have for breakfast is the common thing people always say. And if people get shirty, and guests can get shirty, talent can get shirty, you know, you're there to do a good job and stuff like that. And as a professional, you should respect that. Take control of the situation. Confidence is one of the biggest parts of recording. Having the confidence to say, no, we're starting this again. Sorry, can you not bang the table? Can you not scratch your beard? My beard always catches up on my condenser microphone. It's disgusting sound, really is. That's something to take into consideration. Have the confidence, tell people to stop, make sure you're recording. All these things, be comfortable. Remote recording, that's just done on laptops, and they will have an input and an output. Output is what you're listening to, your headphones, speakers, whatever. Your input is your input. So if you've got an interface, click your interface. Now, this can be fine with guests. They can pick, and laptop microphones might be okay for this. In this scenario, in this lockdown scenario, I've got some clients, and they're like, they don't want anything to do with anything technical. They don't want to be sent a USB microphone. They don't want any of this stuff. That's the only way. And it's okay. If they're doing that, use Zencastr. Zencastr records locally, which is what I love. You always want a local recording over IPDL. IPDTL also does it locally. But I don't think Clean Feed does. I think that's recording on your end of what's coming through the line. So then that's going over the internet. It's being compressed in a certain manner. It's glitchy. You know, it depends on the internet connection. Make sure you record locally if you can, and that can be as easy as doing it on your iNotes, on your voice memos on a phone. That's a really good way of doing remote recordings. A simulrec is what it's known as in the sort of radio industry. That'll save recordings as well. But I like Zencastr for that. It's affordable. It's very user friendly. So if you're sending it to a guest who just has not the foggiest, it will be okay usually. What it automatically does is uploads to your Dropbox, your Google Drive, your computer, their local recording. Make sure they don't click off the browser the minute it's over. But that's really great in these times. It saved a lot of projects recently for sure. I've been told by Sarah we've got 5 minutes left. If you haven't guessed, I can talk for England, so I'll have to go through this last few points. And kind of the last thing is client expectations and budgeting. I know it sounds ridiculous, but given all the information I've done, it should put you in a pretty good area and time to put together a really nice kit list. Buy yourself a case, get it all in there, and take all these into consideration. You know, if you're going to buy 4 microphones, maybe buy 2 of another. You know, use the information I just said to better equip yourself for different scenarios. Because, like I said, there's some things that will kind of fit the mold for everything, and some that won't. So hopefully, with all this information, you'll be in a more informed decision to purchase equipment, know what you're purchasing, know that it's right for the job. And then client expectations and budgeting. And I'll leave on this point because this might be something that comes up in the next few weeks for you. I've got so many, I've had 2 clients that will, at the moment, who are like, okay, I want this and I want it to sound like this. Okay, but it's someone recording it at home in their shed because they're knocked down. Yeah, but I want it to sound like this. You need to tell them it won't. Unless that person's plugging a really nice microphone into a preamp, going through Zencastr using that, fine. But if not, and they're not willing to be sent a USB microphone, which is plug and play, and they can send it back afterwards, they don't want to wear headphones, they don't want to do any of these things, you need to set the expectation very early on and say, look, some things can be fixed in post, but one of the best things that I was ever taught was get it right on the day. Make sure you've got a clean, amazing recording, because anything you do there, past that, with sexy plugins and really great mixed engineers and stuff, they can polish things really nicely. But imagine what they can do with just amazingly recorded, quiet audio. You know, it's so much better. Get it right on the day. So set your expectations. If a client's turning around saying, I don't want to spend more than £100 on this, you can tell them their options. These are the 2 microphones you can have. This is good for this, this is good for this. And it's your reputation at the end of the day as an engineer, as a producer. Make sure you don't get caught out by that. I've seen people get caught out before, where they've over-promised or under-promised. You know, it can go both ways. So I think that is probably, now I can talk about this for hours, as you've probably gathered. We can go more in detail to like those different things, but as Sarah said, I've only got a few minutes left. I know it's like I haven't got a presentation or handouts or anything, but feel free to contact Sarah with my details, and or for her to pass on your details. If you've got any burning questions or anything you really want people to cover, I'm super open to that. Slide into my DMs on Twitter, Instagram. I actually don't know my handle. I think I'll tell you right now. If you want my email, if you could go through Sarah, that'd be great. You can catch me through my website, which is www.kieronbanerji.co.uk. That's KIERONBANERJI.co.uk. My Twitter handle is @KieronBanerji, same spelling, KIERONBANERJI. And I think my Instagram handle is the same. Instagram is the best place to get me, actually, sadly enough. I know Sarah is more of a Twitter person and stuff. But Instagram, if you want to get me quickly, Instagram's the best place. Any questions, I'm more happy to jump on a Zoom call and help anyone out if you've got any more questions or these sorts of things, more specifics and stuff. Or if you want to send me links to things you want to buy or budgets and stuff like that, I'm super happy to take on any questions. So I hope this was useful. I hope I didn't bore everyone. But thank you. I don't know how to end this. Sarah, do you end this?